Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Purposing Oversight Committee. It is Thursday, September 21st, and the time is 1 p.m. We will start to ensure that we have a quorum so that we can conduct the business of the Purposing Oversight Committee. We will start with District 2 Commissioner Kelly Robinson.
Madam Vice Chair, present.
Wonderful. Our Purchasing Oversight Director, Ms. Ammons.
Present.
Our Assistant County Administrator, Ms. Tiffany Stewart-Stanley.
I'm present. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I'm the chairman of this committee and Vice Chair, Commissioner Carth, and I'm present. So we do have a quorum to conduct business. Our first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Has everyone had a chance to go over those meeting minutes? Are there any updates, deletions, or corrections to those meeting minutes?
No, ma'am.
If not, can we adopt the meeting minutes by common consent?
Yes.
Well, the meeting minutes have been adopted. Ms. Ammons, we will start with you. Is there any old business that we need to take care of?
So the first item on the list is the Lunch and Learn. My Lunch and Learn was held on Tuesday, September 19th. And if it's okay with Chair, I condensed it. And so we can step through a couple of slides if you all would like, and for the public's knowledge of what the RFX is in our policy and procedure here in Douglas County.
Absolutely. Take it away.
All right. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. I'm gonna put in presentation mode. Okay, so this year's Lunch and Learn was titled RFX and ITB, the process, the procedure, and the policy. Here I want to remind everyone that the model for the procurement department is fairness, transparency, and compliance. And this is our goal, this is how we operate, and this is how we will continue to move Douglas County forward. Our first slide here is we want to talk about some of the governing laws, policies, and rules that govern how we procure items here in the county. And at the top, we have federal guidelines. And a subset of federal guidelines, we also include each agency across the board. We have a particular document, and then each agency has a twist on those documents as well. And we in procurement, we have to know a little bit about all of them. And that would include ARPA funding, HUD funding, FTA funding, Georgia Department of Transportation, and FEMA, just to name a few. We also have Georgia state law that we have to govern ourselves accordingly by. And then a subset of that would be our Douglas County Code of Ordinances. We have some from ACCG. Then our county policy, procurement policy and procedure manuals, and then we'll round that off with the P-card policy. And so we try not to move based upon our opinions. We move based upon these particular laws, policies, and guidelines. So when it comes to procurement, there are 7 stages to procurement, and I will just kind of briefly go through these. It's not a quick process, and yet it can be easy when we understand those particular stages. The first stage is our need identification, where the individual department will come up with a need for whatever it is, whether it's landscape, whether it's a transportation operator service. The department comes and they define their particular need, and then they research, and they will align their goals and objectives with business strategy, and also determine if a competitive solicitation is required. The next, we move into the pre-solicitation stage, where they may identify their stakeholders, develop a project timeline, start to develop a scope, set a budget, and receive budget approval. Stage 3 will be the solicitation preparation, where they will finalize the scope and schedule a kickoff meeting with procurement. So up until this particular point, the lead in stages 1, 2, and 3 is with the individual departments. Then in stage 4 is the solicitation process, where we post the solicitation. We have or host pre-bid meetings and conferences. We answer questions that are submitted by the vendor community. And then we also post clarifications. Stage 5 is our evaluation process. The bids have closed. We review submissions to ensure that the bidder has submitted everything that was required. That can be a bid bond, a copy of a certification, that they submit their references, whatever we've asked for, we ensure that it has been submitted before we would begin the actual process of scoring the particular proposal. And then we have meetings for evaluation team members, and if needed, presentations and interviews. Stage 6 is our award process, where in this particular stage, the evaluation committee in 5 has determined who we would like to move forward with. And so in stage 6, we will submit this either back to the committee and seek the committee approval and then move forward to the Board of Commissioner meeting. Sometimes it goes straight to the BOC, but that's what we ask, and we seek approval for that particular vendor. And we post a notice of intent to award, because at this particular stage, we haven't signed any contracts yet. And there's still a couple of other legal documents that we need to wait, and we need to have before we have that final sign off of contract and that final notice of award. And then stage 7 is the contract process, where we have a signed contract and everyone is ready to move forward. So briefly, back in stage 1, as you're doing your research, last year I did present a lunch and learn titled Statewide Contracts and Cooperative Agreements. And so here is when people or the departments can decide, okay, I may want a particular item. Can I procure this through a statewide contract or a cooperative agreement? And I won't need the full RFX process. And so they would reach out. These are just a few of the cooperative agreement organizations that they can utilize and that we are a member of. So next is stage 2. We're going to address here just the scope of work. And for a lot of departments, understanding what a scope is. And a scope really is a written description of the entity or department's needs and desired outcome for procurement, and is developed at the beginning of the cycle. This is where we determine what we want and what we need, and how we're going to evaluate those vendors that have provided a submission. Now, failure to clearly identify an objective and a scope is likely to we will receive responses which we cannot fairly compare. Right? So the scope goal is to paint the picture of what success looks like, describe what it would take to make the department 100% satisfied, and a good scope assures that all of the vendors propose a proper solution that will meet department's needs. So one quick example is if we ask for a RFP for a house, we will receive thousands of submissions based upon a house. But a great scope of work will really designate or state, I would like a ranch style home that's 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, and a 2-car garage on an acre of land. So that is where we actually, pare down the actual specifics. And so that is the difference. That is why we say we want our goal to make sure it paints the picture of exactly what we want. Now, here's one that I'm going to move to enforce across the board, that if we work with an external consultant to help develop a scope, that they must sign a confidentiality agreement form. So what happens is I was on the phone with a consultant talking about possibly engaging them to help us with the particular project. And that particular consultant said, oh, people have been calling me about this particular project because they heard it was coming in the future. So what happens is, outside of the normal work relationships, as we are discussing, if we are working with someone to develop something for us, we have no control on if they are sharing that with the vendor community, and then that community and that subset has a leg up and may have access to what we need before the general public. So it becomes unfair and not transparent. So in stage 3, we're going to determine the solicitation types. And for us here in Douglas County, we want to just focus on these 3, and that's an RFQ, an ITB, and an RFP. An RFQ is a request for quote, where it's just based on price. I need a chair, and I would like my chair to be of this type, this nature, and then the vendor community can provide it. So we're not necessarily evaluating the particular package. It's just based upon price. ITB is an invitation to bid based on price, but yet it has more qualifying factors in it. You have to have a bid bond. Have you been in business for 5 years? Do you have a contractor's license? Are you insured? So we check all of those boxes and then move to price. That is an invitation to bid. And then with an RFP, typically longer, a full-blown proposal, where we actually, at the evaluation stage, we evaluate the technicality of your proposal. Can you do what we asked you to do? Can you perform that particular service? Do you have experience? What is your staffing ratio looking like, or your staffing mix? Show us that you have performed this type of service in the past. We evaluate, and that's called technical. And then next we move on into price. Price is opened up last because we want the most technical, or the one that we scored the highest from a technical perspective, may not necessarily be the least cost solution. Yes. So here's just comparing the methods. One slide to kind of show the difference between a competitive sealed bid. They're both, we form a solicitation. We have to advertise. The goal for the competitive sealed bid is the lowest price, but yet for actual proposal, it is the best value. Responses are evaluated by the procurement department in tandem with the business department for a competitive sealed bid. Before a competitive proposal, a formal evaluation committee has been formed and evaluated, and procurement is typically not on the evaluation committee. We are just there to provide guidance. The evaluation process, again, is just by cost. No negotiations allowed for an ITB. We can ask for clarification, but no negotiations. And yet for a proposal, we do and we can negotiate the price that was submitted, but that's further down the line. And again, the award is based upon the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. For a sealed bid, we still may ask for supporting documentation, and if the vendor does not submit it, then we cannot move forward. And then with a competitive proposal, the vendor with the highest overall score or rank will win the business. I have also begun in stage 3 a request for solicitation form. I'll develop it, and it is one that we will move forward with. In the actual training, I went through the form, and the purpose of the form is to ensure that the actual departments have what they need for them to be successful and for procurement to be successful. So I'm asking for approval from finance department heads and grants if applicable. Some may ask why. And so the form does ask for a funding source. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, different funding sources have different requirements. We have different items that we must put in the RFP. And if we are not aware that that is a particular funding source, then we can be in violation. For example, FTA solicitations require a lot of clauses based upon a type of solicitation. They must be included, and bidders must sign that they have been in receipt of the particular clauses. And if I was not aware that it was an FTA funded solicitation, then I would not include those applicable clauses. And then upon review, we will be sanctioned. We could possibly have to return the funds. And so, it's good to know what it is up front. And every day we discovered something just the other week that we were possibly missing a document because we didn't realize or bring forth that it was a particular funding source. And we were able to get through it, but we need to know up front, and the more information we have. And the most important request for this particular form is the scope requirement. A lot of the departments come forth and they do not have a scope. And it takes longer when procurement has to develop the scope. And procurement shouldn't, because I'm not sure what you need in your department. So it's best to come from that particular department. So I believe that as we move Douglas County forward, as the departments start to plan out their procurements, plan out when they will, I always say, start at the end when you want the building built, then it will allow us more time versus putting together documents at the last minute and then rushing it through. So that is something that I will send out the full presentation with the solicitation forms, and we again require our departments to have that signed off, and then we can get started. Now, this does not mean, as I move forward, that procurement will not work with a department as they begin to formulate the solicitation. We are here for that. We will always help, but we just can't write the scope. Now, as we begin the solicitation process, I want to remind everyone that there is a restriction on staff communication with bidders. Now, for every solicitation that is posted, we do require vendors to acknowledge that there is a restriction for the bidders to communicate with staff, but there's also restrictions on staff communicating with bidders. And this is because sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and we want to avoid a lack of transparency. We want to stop someone for speaking and maybe giving away information. And so all communication must come through the procurement department. And that is, again, to maintain fairness, transparency, and compliance. In the solicitation process, I just highlighted a couple of steps. When solicitations are posted in the legal organ, which is the Douglas County Sentinel, they are posted on BidNet, which is our platform for electronic bid submissions, and they're also posted on the Georgia Procurement Registry. Georgia law does state that all bids above $100,000 and our public works must be put on the Georgia Procurement Registry. But I typically put 98% of everything on the Georgia Procurement Registry as well, because that brings more, the vendor community is a little greater than BidNet. And so if I can send out a solicitation and cast a wider net, then that brings in more competition to the county. We do have pre-bid meetings during the solicitation process. I had one this morning. Most are non-mandatory, but that is an opportunity for vendors to come out, to walk properties, to actually look at the job that we're asking them to perform, and to ask some general questions. And again, we respond on questions and answers and post addendums. So now the evaluation process. The evaluation process begins with an examination of bids after opening to determine responsibility and responsiveness in other aspects. Evaluation team responsibilities, that they are to evaluate bids individually, must not discuss with anyone, and must remain unbiased. They have to be honest and fair, and procurement does reserve a right to clarify any rating on and or ask for additional comments. We like to have comments with our ratings because there are times when a vendor will come back to us, ask for a debriefing, and we want to be honest with them. We want vendors to respond to our solicitations, but we also want to be a friend to them as well and explain to them why they may not have won a particular solicitation. But please note, All evaluators must sign a participation form when they are served on the team, and that includes internal and external to Douglas County as well. So our move here is to we're shifting from just the lowest unit price and adversarial win-lose, and we're looking for the best value for the county and a total cost of ownership. And we want to leverage the supplier expertise to offer better products. And finally, we want to talk about a timeline. The amount of time it takes to complete an RFP greatly varies and is dependent on a lot of factors and the complexity of the bid. And so I'm going to show just a general timeline to understand that it depends on how much preparation, if this is something that we've done in the past, or just how complex that the timeline, it really just depends. So typically it may take up to 60 days from need identification until a solicitation is posted. RFPs typically post for 30 days. Georgia law requires for all public works bids over $100,000, they must post for 30 days. I like 30 days because, again, it allows everyone just open competition, but we can post something as little as 3 days. Now, once bids are open and the requirements are checked, that takes a little time. Everything is it's not urgent. And then we have to allow for evaluation, reference checks, interviews, committee approvals, and board approvals, and finally negotiations. And so the point of this slide is, again, to encourage everyone to plan out their projects. Some of the conversations I have are when do we want it to close, when do we want to evaluate, and what day is the committee meeting. And that concludes the presentation, high level. We have any questions?
Thank you so much. Like, that really helped me. I don't know how many other people it helped, although, you know, the general public is really who it's for, right? This is the Purchasing Oversight Committee. So to understand the purchasing process and the procurement process in order to get bids and the general services taken care of, the government does have to go through a process. We can't just, you know, do it haphazardly, right? So this is very crucial. And the fact that you stated a lot of this has to do with a funding source as well, so to ensure that we are in compliance. So thank you for that. Douglas County did renew a SPLOST last year. Thank you, citizens. And so we know in the upcoming months and in the few years moving forward, purchasing will have a lot on its plate in terms of putting out bid requests. And so I think this was very good for the public and very good for those departments that are going to help us in heading up these projects. So thank you for that overview. Commissioner Robinson, do you have any questions in regards to this or any comments? Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. Well done, Director Amos. Excellent. Very eloquent. You nailed this one. So just a couple questions for clarity. And I appreciate the methodology in which you laid this out. Looks like we're finally standardizing things.
Yes.
It's not that people intuitively who've been here a long time haven't been doing it, but you put it in writing. And these are the steps. So you had a class. How many people were at your class? And represented at that class?
Approximately 20 in the class. I invited all county directors, and I asked that they forward to anyone on their team who could, you know, utilize the training.
Did you film it?
Yes, I recorded it.
Okay, awesome. That's make sure you put that out then. That was some good information. If you deliver like you just delivered here, everybody needs to see this. All right, so I got it. A couple more technical questions as relates to now I know talk about capacity, and you're relying on the departments to really drive the initial 3 steps of this methodology, this procurement process. And you talked about you created a scope of work document. Will that document be applied across the board? Can it be customizable? Or this is the document? If you don't fill this out like a NOPA notice for HR, is this now the new document?
No, this was just a form that said, you know, my name, department, when I would like it to post. And I can pull up the form if you all would like to see it. It was more almost like the notebook, and it doesn't stop. But what was happening, or a pattern that I discovered, is no one knew what a scope was and where to start. And so I'm not fully staffed. I'm, part of the reason because we're so busy that I was writing scopes and didn't know if this is what they really wanted. And so the point is just to have some type of organization, meaning, hey, I need this, and maybe I don't have a scope. And LaTanya, do you have, can you help me? And so yes, I help. Yes, I can give, I have access to previous RFPs written from entities across the country. And if people have a willingness to take that and read it, yes, I will help. But a lot of them are, I don't have anything, and why don't I have my RFP completed? And so to meet me halfway, here's the form. Just let me know when you want it. Let me know what the funding source is. Let me know if it's a repeat. We can just copy and paste something that we utilize before, but also, is your managing director aware? Is finance aware? We don't want to, and have you checked for a cooperative agreement? Because some of these items, I placed a bid and went through the whole process, and they said, oh no, we ended up purchasing it through a cooperative agreement. Well, that's human capital resources. And so it's not a cut and dry form, but it's really more informative and to also get people thinking.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, again, contract management, procurement management, project management, et al. There is, it is a science.
Yeah.
The School of Science, right? So this means it can be standardized, and it's a cultural shift. You're having to decentralize. You can't carry this big size organization, this many projects in your department. So some of this, to your point, needs to managing directors have to step up. We as leaders on the board must set expectations to reinforce what you're asking. Like, yeah, about time. Right? You got to standardize this. I'm also believing that with that framework, and it's just a framework. Yes, we go out on Google and we do everything else out there. Why can't y'all find a form to move yourself along? Some of it's independent learning, right? You shouldn't have to dictate something, not at this level. Not this size organization, but duly noted. Tabulations, you're gonna be consistent. So did you give them a framework on how to tabulate and how we review things and how you add up scores? You did that, right?
No, I didn't get that details because a lot of what we do is ITB. Now, the tabulation is standardized on my design, build, construction contracts, because I do have a framework RFP for that one. The other ones is just really, it is dependent. And so I teach that for each individual RFP. Some are, some is just a lump sum, there's no tabulation. Some of them, depending on the qualifications that we're asking. But ideally, just because of timing, I did not talk about the average proposal has 100 points, and we may assign 70 weighted average 70% to technical and 30% to price. I did not get into the weeds of that, but I do have a standardization for design build contracts. And we'll move forward in the future with some standardization for the other ones, because no two are alike. We're evaluating things differently.
Understood. There's still a baseline in how the structure is, and you may change the words and the numbers and the weightings and stuff. I get it, but it's just structure.
Yes.
All right, got it. I got two more questions for you. So also, you talked about communication. Mm-hmm. That's key. I won't even say it's the elephant in the room. It's like, yeah, people go to conferences, they meet vendors, it's allowed by law. Mm-hmm. If they're talking about, hey, what we got coming down the pipeline, it's shared. Mm-hmm. It finally hits, right? We know how people sometimes shape RFPs by talking to department heads. Mm-hmm. Right? Inside knowledge, right? And I'm putting this out there to be transparent. To your point, like, now y'all know how this works now. Now it's up to us as people inside government to make sure, look, y'all gotta be compliant now. There is a line. There is a time period in which you can talk, and there's also a dark period. there's rules. It's like, all right, now, you know how this works. Now, I'm glad you're saying we're going to hold this. And so, and if there is some type of violation, I'm hoping that there's a process both legally and HR, like, now we're not playing with this. Don't let us see this. You can't allow it. And it has to be consistent in how you apply when people are outside the line.
Okay.
Consistent. We're good. You got this. I got you. And my last thing regarding this is, I heard evaluation of. I know you're on the front side, but what about the feedback mechanism that once it's delivered, I still got to come back to the contract, come back to the solicitation itself, the fulfillment of the outcome. How is that addressed as far as feedback about acceptance of the body of work that we just procured? Is that somewhere? How do we speak to that?
Is your so as I seek clarification, is your question about contract management, and did the vendor provide what they said they were going to provide in a manner that they were contracted to provide it?
Right. You got the front end, followed your checklist, got it. But there's still has to be an acceptance that says that, okay, did it do what it's supposed to do? How is that built in? How do we?
Well, right now we build that in as far as the departments are concerned. We don't have a formalized program yet. That will be in my year 3 or 4 once we have my contract management database, and then we can actually look at all of them and go in and have the checks and the balances. Yes, is vendor performed? Yes, this is what we needed and this is what we asked for. And if we do still need something, then it wasn't on us at the scope. How do we? It's almost like a ongoing spoke wheel as we continue to learn. But formalizing contract management next year.
Understood. You sufficiently answered my questions. Thank you for taking your time. Madam Vice Chair, I yield. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Again, great lunch and learn, and this was educational, obviously, for myself and Commissioner Robinson, and again to the general public. And this is again why this Oversight Committee was really stood up, right? Purchasing affects every area of our government. We really can't do much without the people and without them being able to get the goods and services that are needed to carry out government. So thank you for that. Next is Oversight.
Yes, I am happy to report that after a couple of months, that everything is flowing. And when I say everything, let me step back. Data from Bank of America is flowing accurately to Oversight every night in a daily feed. And so next week we will resume our weekly meetings, and we will start to develop our reports and how we want that to look. And so it took a little while, but I'm happy to report that we're moving forward with Oversight. Yes.
I think that's music to our ears. Usually the buck stops with us, right?
Yes.
So yes. Thank you for that. To the general public, I think they acknowledge that was needed, and it should make them feel good that as we are using taxpayers' dollars, we are managing it and we are being intentional about the oversight of those tax dollars. So thank you for that. I think it's good news. Are there any questions regarding that? Commissioner Robinson, you have the floor.
Yeah, just real quick, just in case it slipped. I had to think about what y'all were saying about Oversight. Okay. What is Oversight?
Oversight is the company that we contracted with to provide audit of our P-card purchases.
Got it. Just wanted to clarify that, just for the record. I'm good. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
No problem. Thank you. We will now move on to our new business discussion item. Sorry, MBE resolution. So I give a little context. The first year that I came in, one of my initiatives was to put in place a DBE, right? And so we did that, and then you brought it to my attention, Commissioner. We see the DBE, but we need an MBE, and so moving forward, you now will talk to us about an MBE resolution. So you have the floor, Ms. Hankins.
Yes, I have. I realized in writing up, policies and procedures, I'm like, oh, we have a great process. Resolution for DBE. And DBE a lot of times deals with specifically our resolution, like our transportation projects, and those kind of funded by federal dollars. But we also have a lot of items that are funded by non-federal dollars. And so how do we move forward in reaching a segment of our population that the US government and the state have deemed as to being overlooked at times? And so that would be through an MBE process. And so I wanted to bring to the committee's attention that we don't have one, and I would like to move forward in developing an MBE resolution. I do not have one prepared today, but I just wanted the approval before I started the work to move forward with the same targeted goal, right? Because we know that as we grow and we mature and move Douglas County forward, we want to have more tools, and we want to be able to track our spend across the county in all categories, be it DBE, MBE, and MBE will also include WBE as well. Yes.
Thank you for that. So just for those who are listening, DBE is Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, MBE is Minority Business Enterprise, and WBE is Women Business Enterprises.
Yeah.
And so I think to have us well-rounded, because our goal, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Robinson, our goal was to ensure that those smaller entrepreneurial mom and pops, those who were local, actually were able to compete with the bigger businesses that are always seeming to capture the market. And so what our goal was with the DBE was to, kind of even the playing field when it comes to us, because we're going to spend the money regardless, right? We're going to make sure that those projects that are out there are doled out. We just want to make sure that those who may not be able to play at a bigger, on a bigger playing field, that they were considered, right, weighted in so that they could also compete. And so to me, I'm excited that you even brought it to my attention to say, hey, we need an MBE as well, because not all dollars are federal dollars that we spend. You're absolutely right. So I'm in favor of that. But I will yield to Commissioner Robinson and, of course, to ACE Stuart Stanley for their take on this as well. Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. No, I mean, you're on point. I mean, you were the driver behind this process. I think at the end of the day, over time, the spirit of it was just to ensure inclusion first. By default, we typically, human nature is what you're familiar with. And you tend to lean toward, even in your evaluation, those and that you're familiar with. And there's something about, as you said, opening comments about fairness, equal access, equal opportunity, equal treatment. And so I think that was the spirit. And what happens is that, through federal and even at state level, is that when you have these certification qualifiers, at least for those small businesses, like, look, guys, to get in the game, though, you've got to have this minimum. There's a minimum standardization. So if we put this certification, we'd at least accelerate the process that you've at least done your fundamentals. A lot of times you get pressure from small business to put them in the game, and why aren't y'all considering me? But you're not ready. You're not shovel ready. And so this process, these certifications are designed in such a way that says, just go through this. You have the fundamentals in place. Have you gone through the process of positioning yourselves? Like, clean up your uniform, get yourself in order, like put the right uniform on. And so there is some value in it. In essence, are you really ready to go to the next level? Also, it was designed in such a way that there is federal laws and state laws that you need to have participation. Right? We'll get that, and we would like to. It is a goal to have inclusion. And a lot of times they say, well, we can't find nobody. There's nobody out there. Well, some of this, if you have people registered in MBE, WBE, DBE, at least you've got, well, here's a listing, a registry of those people who are past this. And so now you can't say that you can't find anybody, because again, we only look toward what we're familiar with in our backyard. So I think there is something to this program that will serve over time, and I'm excited that people are included. And I think that's all I want to say. It's all about inclusion. All you want to do is an equal opportunity and equal access. The rest, you got to compete. So at the end of the day, this doesn't guarantee you. You got to compete. You got to deliver. So you got to compete, and then you got to deliver your work, and then this prepares you to one day, perhaps if you have to team, you have to be a subcontractor, whatever it may take. If you can team up and one day you can qualify for some of these bigger $100,000 million contracts that are awarded sometimes that people are seek, but they're not ready to do. That's all I had to say. It was just a statement. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. So I am going to move that we do a MBE resolution. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Or let me go one by one. Commissioner Robinson?
Robinson, yes.
Director Amos?
Yes.
ACA Stewart Stanley?
Yes.
And I, Commissioner Carthen, yes. So the motion carries 4-0 for an MBE resolution. I take it as you hire staff, you can kind of flush this out for us, because once we have the resolution, I would also like to have some resources around helping our local minority businesses and women businesses to get certified. A lot of times people just don't know the route and the direction to take. I think Commissioner Robinson has some good resources from his doing business and his annual doing business that we can actually tap into to help our local community meet those goals and get certified.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's my request around that. But I look forward to this being fleshed out and the resolution being put before the board for passage.
Okay.
We will go on to our next discussion item, which is open bids. And the same as you have before.
Yes, so I currently have 6 open bids, 2 closed this week. So let's talk about the 6 that are open. So we have Douglas County Fire Station number 9, and that's solicitation 23-028. That closes next week. We have Douglas County Senior Center renovations, closes next week. And we have Spine Road, the new location construction project, currently open. We have a Livable Centers Initiative Study, solicitation 23-031. That's Allison Duncan's group. I'm going to come back to a last one. One that posted this week was design build services for a new E911 backup facility. So that will be my first design build from cradle to grave. And so I want to publicly thank Thompson Hine. We developed the solicitation and the corresponding contract. What I mean by solicitation, the design build language to get it where we wanted it for the county, and the subsequent contract that will follow. And ironically, I went to a conference and took the construction pathway and took 4 construction classes, because we have several in the county coming out. And so everything, it was just great timing. The construction classes, the contract, the RFP, and I can't wait. So thank you all for that. And then lastly, we have the public transit third party operator RFP. And so this could be a little bit of old business, because we did discuss this last time, but yet it is open. I am happy to announce that we had the pre-bid conference today. And one of the topics that we did discuss, as far as, again, casting a wider net, is not only was the solicitation posted midnet in the Georgia Procurement Registry, but I was able to post it through the Georgia Transit Authority and the Community Transportation Organization. So I had those 2 organizations to also post the RFP for us as well. Since the meeting was non-mandatory, we did have 3 companies represented, and we have at least 10 who have downloaded documents online. So I am very hopeful that we receive a cross number of submissions for this particular solicitation.
That is excellent. That is music to my ears, because we know when we get more eyes on it, then we're going to have more people who are actually bid on it, and we can get, I think, what is more so a fair representation of what it would actually cost us to get, whether we go with the same provider or whether we go with a new provider, we will actually be able to get those, sorry about that, we'll actually be able to get more bids, more people, and we can get a fair range for what it actually costs to provide that service. So that is excellent. Thank you for casting that net. I know Commissioner Robinson and I talk about this all the time. We gotta look in other places. We gotta be able to put it before other organizations when we're putting it out there, and not just with these services, but even when we cast a wider net to get some of these positions filled within the county. And so this is good news. So thank you for giving us the update on those opening bids. Are there any questions regarding the open bids?
Got one.
Sure, Ms. Robinson.
Yeah, and just in general, you mentioned the E911 backup. And along parallel with that, there was a coroner design build as well as the E911. Is that right behind that one? Where do we stand on that one? Do you know?
Yes, we are. The coroner facility is right behind, and I'm waiting on. I think it's just one kind of missing piece of information that we're waiting on internally, but that one is ready to go. As soon as we have that last piece of information.
The only reason I bring that up because both of those they currently are in the current building that we sold to the city. Yes. We have a timeline this end of next year to be out. And so I know how long it takes to do solicitations and actually do the work, and it's just being mindful of the time. The same thing with the Spine Road. There is a date certain that we're supposed to have things, that we're contractually obligated through both of those two IGAs, and just want to be mindful of that. It's not like we're controlling it. We get done when we get done. There is perhaps penalties and expectations that were set if we don't make those marks. But I just want to put that out there. But I know you're on it. Thank you. We're good. Madam Vice Chair, we're good. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And so, upcoming bids, Ms. Ammons.
Yes, so I have several more. The first one we'll talk about is special inspections for the new Douglas County Fire Station. That one will go out early next week. The library mobile unit, I believe that's ARPA funds, if I'm not mistaken. And I see Joe Hobson's on the line. That's going out soon. Countywide auditor for financial services, because we're in the fourth quarter, and so audit period usually begins in January. And today found out about the software for the transportation center. So they are working on that RFP. So that's 4 that I will discuss today for upcoming bids. I have more on my list, but we'll keep with those 4.
Thank you so much. Any question regarding those upcoming bids?
No.
Okay, being none, we will go on to miscellaneous. I do have one. I heard you state regarding the software you would need for contract management. Where are we with that?
So I received a quote from actually BitNet. BitNet is who we utilize now for our bids. They do have a suite of products to help us on the front end, solicitation and scope. It's a documentation or tracking, right? Because if I have a scope, I can load it up. You could comment, we can work in a particular document together and then feed it over into the bid solicitation process. And then on the back end, they do have a contract management tool. And I like the tool because what the tool allows is if we, let's say, award a contract, and we know for a lot of our contracts, certificates of insurance are required. We can attach that into the contract. So not only will the system let us know when a contract expires, the system will also let us know when a certificate of insurance expires or any other documents that are associated with that particular contract. And so I did put that budget request in for next year. So I do have a quote, and I did submit that as well. And I did want to add that even with BitNet and the contracting tool, I have added users around the county so they can also use the tool again, helping to just relieve take some of the pressure off of purchasing, but they can also be involved in the entire process as well and see it from another angle. And so a larger tool will help with that.
Thank you for that. Oftentimes I think that is a big thing for us as commissioners, right? Because we appropriate these contracts. We are, giving the chairman permission to sign and enter these agreements. But we also need to know, where's the management of them, right? Commissioner Robinson stated a few questions ago, like what happens on the back end if a contract is possibly not fulfilled, or we have questions regarding the scope of the contract or how it's actually being done. How, we're not tracking that. Like you said, it's how do we do it? And so I think this is another tool that a county our size needs. Back in the day, we probably didn't need this, right? Everybody knew what was going on. There weren't many projects, but now Douglas County has grown. And we have to have, the software, the tools, the technology, and of course the people to manage and provide better services, not only to our citizens, but to those vendors that we employ as well. So just wanted to see if you were, pushing that.
Yes, and this particular tool, Lisa will be able to upload all contracts. It's not just those contracts that are a result of a solicitation. It's a true contract management tool.
Thank you for that. Any questions regarding that or surrounding that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Sure, Commissioner Robinson, you have the floor.
Yeah, no, and again, I'm listening, and so that's on the front end. We've got contract management we can upload. So this sounds like there's going to be a historical archive. So it's just not the contract on the front side. Talk to me about that, because contracts get amended,
Yes,
get extended. So just be brief, but does it deal with that? Is that what I'm hearing?
I will.
It's just not when the chairman signs off on something. Okay, and Lisa, now we go around, Madam Vice Chair, we sign our name, we authorize it. Got it. He did his contract and got it. It's been uploaded. Got it. Amendments, things like that. How does that work? How do you keep up with it? How do you keep things tied? Does the application allow that?
Yes, if I remember correctly, tying from the amendment perspective. But if you're asking about historical, maybe something we signed in 2020, then yes, as ability, we can upload everything if that's what we want. But I will definitely talk to the vendor again to make sure, because it was very robust, but your question is very specific, and I want to make sure I can answer your specific question.
No, okay, I'll leave it at that. That's fine. I'm just thinking about like New World. We upload contracts. I'm trying to align everything across the board. All these applications, all these one-offs, all these front ends. Like, okay, are they integrated? Are they talking? We got different repositories, so it's more of oversight question. I'm stepping back to your point, looking at the whole system. Like, you got you got this, you got this. Like, okay, you got Lisa. Yeah, before 2008, like, right, everything's in a file folder. But we sometimes have to go back and look back historically and find stuff. So I'm just curious, just like you're doing with oversight. You gotta go back and put this history in here. Got it. So I'm just asking a general question. It's going to be what it is, whatever the scope is what's going to get delivered. But I'm just asking for my own insight.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good. Leave it at that. I'm good. We'll talk offline. Madam Vice Chair, we're good. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, I will open the floor now if there are any questions or anything that needs to be brought before the Purchasing and Oversight Committee. All right, being none, this meeting is adjourned at 1:53. Thank you all for participating and giving an update. And